Well, we somehow made it to a Friday. Welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show here on my YouTube channel, Joe Cioffi. And for those of you who haven't done so yet, make sure you also have bookmarked and subscribed Joe Rayo's YouTube channel, which is Joe Rayo Weather. So we're here. We've made it. New York State is basically on a sort of lockdown, essential personnel only, as we head into the weekend. So, you know, just one more day. We just have to just keep trudging along, right?
Keep trudging along, just like the warm front that took basically much of the day to get through my part of New York State, up in Putnam County, Joe. As of 2 o'clock this afternoon, it was 51 degrees here with about 500-foot visibility in fog. Now, my wife just told me over the intercom here, 72 degrees. We had a bit of sunshine breaking through, and now we're actually seeing some more showers. I presume that's going to be the cold front that will work its way through. No sign of any thunder or lightning, but this is going to be changing our weather for the better, actually. A lot of sunshine coming our way for most of the upcoming weekend up here, and also chillier temperatures. I want to just say also that I think tonight's going to be basically cloud filled, partly to mostly cloudy. And when you wake up tomorrow morning, don't be surprised if you look out the window and it's still kind of dreary looking. I personally don't think we're going to break out into a lot of sunshine, and we will, but probably not until late morning or maybe even early afternoon. After that, we'll be home free with bright skies and clear weather through the balance of the weekend.
Yeah, the front kind of gets hung up just a little bit, and we're also seeing there are still a few scattered. As you said, you've got some rain over there, and there are a couple of scattered showers and storms on the radar. I just want to, I had a similar experience here. Actually, the sun poked out around, oh, I don't know, around noontime or a little bit after for a short period, and then it just clouded over again. It really wasn't until after 3 o'clock that we started to break out wide open and managed to get up into the 60s. Now, the chairman, Scott Briller, did inform me that New York City got to 73, which was 3 degrees shy of a record. I've got White Plains here, by the way, Joe, at 7 o'clock at 72. And I remember you telling me that their record for the date was 73. So they might have got close. And Belmar got to 79. Tom's River in New Jersey, 82 for a high. And it's still 82 at Atlantic City right now with a dew point of 54, which has got to feel pretty good. And you can see this evening, I don't have the final highs, but at least as of 7 o'clock, Fort Belvoir down in Virginia is 80. Camp Springs at 77. Baltimore is at 81. Gotta
Wow.
love it. Gaithersburg is 76. Just looking at some of these numbers here. Get down into Virginia. Fredericksburg, Shannon Airport at 81. Let's see. West Point Middle Peninsula Regional Airport is 82. That's to the east of Richmond. And then going north into Pennsylvania, we've got temperatures right now at 73 at York Airport. Harrisburg is at 73. Up the Hudson Valley, well, let's just get Scranton at 66. Rienz at 61 in PA. 70 at Poughkeepsie, 70 at Danbury, 63 at Oxford. Made it up into the 60s, all the way up to Massachusetts and southern New Hampshire and Vermont, and even Albany's at 64. So it warmed up quite nicely. I think at least the temperatures hit their numbers where whoever was supposed to get to 70 today got to 70 today, and that's what I was happy about.
Well, I was happy too because, well, as you know, we were talking about this the last couple of days about the slow movement of that warm front. I was really concerned that some places would just stay much cooler than what had been projected. And at 2 o'clock up here, 51 degrees with 500-foot visibility and fog. I said, "Oh," I said, "That's it. We bombed. This is it. We're
Yeah.
getting close to that." But as soon as the sun broke through, all
Well,
we need is just a little sunshine. Boom, the temperature went straight up, and as I said, we got to 72. and it's 72 right now, as you mentioned, in White Plains. I'm looking on the 3-day history off of okay, all right, 1756 Eastern Daylight Time, which is 5:56 p.m. at Westchester County Airport. 73, that would tie the record
Tie the
that
record.
was,
All
that was
right.
set back in 2010.
So somebody caught the low hanging fruit today. I got the radar up, and you can see some of the showers and storms that are left. There were actually quite a few severe thunderstorm warnings later earlier today in upstate New York, way up in northern New York. I must have saw like 3 or 4 of them at the very least when I took a look at the radar. But since then, much of the activity has kind of diminished somewhat. A couple of these. It looks like two very short broken lines of storms that are moving through, and they're just going to play through for the rest of this evening. So some of you in this area may see them, and some of you won't. And in the meantime, we do have actually some fairly solid looking uh, rain and some heavier showers running from heavier rains from northeastern Texas northeastward all the way up through northern Mississippi, northwest Alabama into Tennessee, western Virginia, and into southeastern Kentucky. So that's on the southern part of that cold front. It's kind of a flat front. There's no severe weather that's going on in this particular area, at least from what I can see so far. I think SPC had a marginal risk down there somewhere. Yeah, so they do have a marginal risk, probably for later this evening or tonight, in that stretch from southern Louisiana on up northeastward into southern Tennessee, and they're still holding. They got that marginal risk over us. Uh, I don't know. I'm looking at what's left of those cells. It's hard to see how they're going to fire up even more than what they are now. So I'm thinking they're probably past peak, and the severe weather threat is just about done.
Yeah,
So
the National Weather Service did put out at 6:51 a special weather statement for northern Fairfield, southern Fairfield County, and Connecticut, northern New Haven, also Putnam, Rockland, northern Westchester, Orange, and the lower Hudson Valley. That the radar was indicating at 6:50 showers which were located along a line from near Fishkill to West Milford, movement east at 45 miles an hour, wind gusts of up to 45 miles an hour possible with these showers. And they also mentioned a thunderstorm is also possible. But as you just mentioned, Joe, if they haven't formed now, I don't think they're going to form.
they ain't gonna
Time.
do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Correct. So here's I think you're right about the clouds tonight, Joe, because you look at the satellite loop, there's a lot of cloud cover back to the Great Lakes and down southward into East Texas, all shooting northeastward. So the front is kind of sliding through on an angle there, northeast southwest. And I agree with you. I think we're probably going to have clouds around through the night and probably into at least the first part of tomorrow morning before weather conditions generally improve. And that's actually going to hold the temperatures up tonight to an extent.
I agree with that. At 36 to 45, I said for the spread of temperatures here in the lower Hudson Valley, and the normal spread of temperatures here in the Hudson Valley at this time of the year should be about 30 to 35. So it'll be a mild night, relatively speaking, tonight. And then as we break out into the sun by late morning or early afternoon tomorrow, we should manage to get not to 70 degrees. No, that's not happening tomorrow, but more like mid 40s to mid 50s, a cold night tomorrow night, and then for Sunday, lots and lots of sunshine from start to finish. But it's going to be unseasonably chilly. Normal high around 52. I don't think temperatures are going to get much higher than the mid and low 40s Sunday afternoon. That
So
sets the stage for what may be coming our way on Monday.
Monday. All right. So let's take us here. Let me just get through. The rest of the nation is that we're actually going into a bit of a quiet mode here, going into the weekend. So much of the nation has really calmed down. We have just a small area across central Tennessee that's still under some flash flood watches, and we've got some wind advisories up in parts of upstate New York, up in northeastern New York mainly. Otherwise, it's a winter weather advisory here, a flood advisory there, and that's just about it. And yes, Joe is correct. As we look ahead to Monday, I have something I haven't had to use in a while, and of course that's WPC's probability of at least. Well, we'll start with 2 inches of snow, and they're going you know, I think it kind of matches up pretty well with what the NAM and the European are doing. The darkest blue is a 40% chance of at least 2 inches, and you see how that probably lines up north of mostly north of Route 80 in Pennsylvania, and but it's not even. I mean, just basically north of Route 80, and in northwest going into northwest Jersey, probably the Sussex County, perhaps getting a shot here that you could wind up with a couple of inches. Joe, I also think this is going to be elevation driven because of the fact that this cold high is going out, so you're going to work with whatever you got, and the inland areas might hold on to it a little bit longer. But I think the snow is going to be elevation driven. Much of it falls in, this is all going to fall during the daytime on Monday. So you've got sun angle issues here with not a whole lot of cold air. Also intensity issues. If you were dealing with a major storm, then you would be talking about snows coming down at 1 to 2 inches an hour. So that would trump the um, the sun angle. But this is what WPC is seeing, and in that periwinkle pink or salmon color in northeastern Pennsylvania up through the Catskills, you have a fairly high probability of at least two. And they also showing probability of 40 to 50% for the Catskills going north. So basically, west of 87 in those in the elevated areas of the mountains west of 87 going up the Hudson Valley, a probability that there could be at least 4 inches of snow. I think that would probably be the top here. This is going to be this is not exactly a well-developed storm or a loaded event, in my view.
Well, you know what? I think it even in New York City, initially, since the column, the atmosphere will still be cold. I think even in New York, the initial shot of precipitation is going to be probably big wet snowflakes, which will probably amaze a lot of people when they look out their windows. But that'll quickly turn over. And I agree with you 100% on the elevation issue. If you're up in a high terrain area, especially above 1,000 feet, and you find a lot of that in northwest Jersey and on up into the parts of the lower Hudson Valley. That snow is going to continue, and I think places north of 84 may see upwards to 2, 3, maybe 4 inches of snow, and even north of 287, maybe an inch or two. But again, the angle of the sun, that will be an issue that'll come into play. It's during the daytime, those infrared and ultraviolet rays interacting with paved surfaces, blacktop. That probably means on Monday that grassy surfaces will get snow accumulations. Maybe, for example, my wooden deck will probably have
Right.
snow accumulation. But the main drags, the main highways and thoroughfares and streets and avenues, they'll probably remain more wet than white on Monday.
I have the on my snow forecast map, which is the first one I had to do in nearly 2 months. I've got the trace line running uh, from I guess along Route 84 in Connecticut, and then into northern Westchester, northernmost Rockland, and then cutting across northwest New Jersey, northern Warren, Sussex County, western Passaic, and then west from there, north of Allentown, going west north of Harrisburg, and then I got a 2 inch line that runs along Route 80, cuts across Sussex County, runs up through say central Orange County to northern Dutchess, and then pulls up. I'm sorry, southern Dutchess, and then pulls up northeastward from there into Connecticut and beyond. And I've got my little 4 inch area, northeastern PA, northeasternmost PA, northern Pike County, up into Sullivan County, right up through the Catskills, and on up west of 87. So I have to tell you, Joe, not having drawn, you get most winters. I'm drawing a snow map usually once a week. Okay, if it's an average winter, I'm probably drawing a snow forecast map for somebody in this area at least once a week. I don't think I've drawn a map for 2 months, and I'm so out of practice. It was like, how do I do this? It felt like how I it felt like how I it did it does that first day in November, that first time in November when you have a possibility, or early December when you have a possibility that there's going to be a snow event. Uh, definitely out of practice.
I seem to remember that you did a snow map for a storm that hit North Carolina up to the
Oh
Virginia.
yeah, I did that. That's right, I did
So,
that.
but I don't think we've had any kind of need for a snow map
Not up
since
here.
since that storm on that Saturday,
Hmm.
January 19th, I think it was.
Right,
It's been
right.
that long. And I got to tell you, I'm a little annoyed with this storm from the standpoint that I've been saying that will this be the first time in my 18 years of living up here in Putnam Valley that we're not going to have a winter where snow went into double digits? I am at 9.8 inches of
Oh,
snow.
you'll probably get it. You'll
I'm
probably
probably
get
going
it.
to, much to my dismay, I think I'm probably going to have at least an inch on the deck before this is all over with on Monday.
Right.
Uh,
Well,
and
I've had my fair share of single-digit winters here, since I've been out here in over 30 years.
yeah,
But there've been very few. But I've also had my share of 60-inch and 70-inch plus winters,
yep, yep.
which have been fun. So just let's take a look at a few of these models. This is the big problem here is the fact that you have no blocking. So this high, this cold high, and it is a cold high. If it could if it were to hold on and just kind of be blocked from moving out, this would be an entirely different story. But there's no blocking in the atmosphere, so the high does eventually go out off of Nova Scotia. You see a weak primary low, which now the models seem to be taking up into Ohio, and that dies out. And then a secondary develops along the Delaware coast and kind of hugs the coastline south of Long Island to Cape Cod. Uh, Without any blocking, that cold air would be if it was some blocking, you'd see that cold air pressing down southward through New England and into Long Island, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, maybe in some instances even as far south as Maryland and Delaware. But it's not happening here, and so it's really how much do you get on the front end, and this moves along. It's not a wrapped up system. It doesn't really develop very much. So I think it is what it is. I mean, eventually you do see snow moving up into Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine for the umpteenth time. So you guys will do fairly well. And from the standpoint of how this looks on the upper air, uh, it's not much. It really isn't much of a trough that we're talking about here. I mean, there's a nice little short wave that just kind of goes by, but it's really more about the fact that that high is non-existent. So we're getting a little bit. There's a trough that the short wave that moves across eastern Canada tonight and Saturday that finally swings out. Little ridging here in the east on Sunday, and then you've got this very weak short wave. You can barely find it here on the upper air that comes through Monday. There's another one behind it that seems to be getting picked up because now all of a sudden we've got all this height fall going on in the west later next week. So suddenly, we have another what looks like another weak another low that goes by. The GFS, by the way, actually has this low a bit further to the south, but it doesn't really make a difference. Then there's another one that comes in on Wednesday with a cold rain and lifts up and out. But the high that builds on Tuesday, builds quickly in and moves out, and it's not nearly as strong as the one for Saturday. And then that lifts up to the northeast, and then we've got another system next weekend that moves up northward up the coast. So we sort of have a pattern now where we're actually seeing weather systems that could have impact if only we had some real cold air. But we don't. Isn't that sad?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the cold rain because I had talked to you about this off before we started the show. I said that in just looking at the forecasts on the local TV stations here, that for Monday they're calling for highs generally in the mid 40s. And I said if you're going to even call for a chance for any kind of snow or wintry precipitation up in the Hudson Valley, I don't think it's going to get much higher than 35, 36. It might touch 40 at Central Park, but I think the temperatures are too warm on Monday, and I also saw temperatures on Wednesday. Some went for as high as the mid 50s, but I think it's going to be a cold rain, as you just mentioned, Joe.
I agree.
And temperatures are going to be only in the 40s on Wednesday. And in between those two chilly days, we've got a day on Tuesday where the sun will come out and temperatures will climb probably through the 50s to maybe even come close to 60 degrees.
Some areas on Monday are going to have that dreaded observation 33 and rain.
Oh, oh,
That is the most depressing weather observation there is. And by the
well,
way, looking at the long range, we seem to be doing the normal breakdown of the jet stream that starts to occur as you move into the end of March and April, and then take you through the rest of the spring. It does. When that happens, you usually wind up with colder air that starts to move southward. Sort of the atmosphere in the process of getting all the cold air out of the way and beginning, the warming that's going to be occurring naturally over the next couple of months. Does have a bit of a colder look at the end of the month going into the beginning of April. Whether anything comes of it, I don't know. All of a sudden now, it looks like we've got higher than normal pressures all across the poles, which means that the Arctic oscillation, which has been record positive readings all winter long,
right.
probably goes negative now as we go into the early part of April.
Ah,
And the NAO will do the same. Let me just see on that. Hang on a second. Let's see what I didn't look at the tellies today. This is March 12th. Look at this. So you've got this off the wall PNA negative till the 28th. The NAO goes negative, Joe. It actually goes. I wouldn't say strongly negative, but I certainly wouldn't say weakly negative. Starting on the 28th of March and going into the first days of April, that would make sense because that's the time. This is the time of year where the NAO likes to go negative. And of course, the EPO, which if you could keep negative through all of this with the NAO going negative, then it could be a lot of fun around here. But no, the EPO is forecast to go to neutral on the 28th and then go somewhat positive as we go into the early part of the month of April. So we actually are going to lose the EPO, which is supported for colder air, but we're going to gain the NAO at the end of the month, at the beginning of April. You know what? Make it go away. Just make it enough. I was out there today walking. I did my 5 miles, and I thought, you know what? This needs to just go away, and let's just warm things up and get on with it. And um, the spring is not the most exciting weather season in the world in the Northeast. In fact, you know my opinion on it, Joe. It's downright miserable. Um, so let's just get it over with so we can get to the summer months, and then we start having to deal with hurricane season and all the rest of it. We're back up full screen, by the way, just so you know, in the interest of disclosure.
but the fact that the Arctic oscillation has been near record levels, and that polar vortex has been sitting over the pole for much, if not all, of this winter season, came up with this information from NOAA that across the state of Alaska it was 2.9 degrees Fahrenheit below normal, the coldest winter up there in 21 years. Up on the north slope of Alaska, there were 7 days in February as cold or colder than 40 degree below zero Fahrenheit or centigrade. It's the same thing either way. In effect, the most in February since 1984 and any month since January of 1989. And we've talked about this too, Joe. Rapid ice growth across the Bering Sea in February, where sea ice expanded to 100% of the average for the month. The first February since 2013 where the Bering Sea ice extent was not below average, all due again to that unusual Arctic oscillation
Yeah.
due to the polar vortex. So all of the people out there who are into global warming and saying this is horrible, this is terrible, it's just another example, and they use as their poster boy the polar bear that doesn't have any ice to stand on. Well, guess what? The polar bear this year and any other Arctic creatures up in and around the North Polar region, they benefited this year. We were warm, but up there they got every bit of the cold weather that they so much enjoy.
Well, what that polar bear, the polar bear on the ice. With that picture of the polar bear on the ice, it's somebody had to take that picture. So I don't know if that person was standing on ice or was in some kind of a boat or something. I don't know, but polar bears are pretty resilient, and they have figured out uh, I saw something I was watching on BBC, Planet Earth, which is a great animal series. If you have nature series, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. With uh, was it David Attenborough? Uh, he's got that wonderful way of the writing and how he describes things. They're fun to watch. But the polar bears have actually moved into northern Hudson Bay, and usually in the summer months, they're starved for food because they need the ice to kind of trap the seals that they eat.
Right.
And sometimes they'll go and scale sides of cliffs and to get the eggs of the nesting birds, which is hardly anything to keep them, but it's just enough to keep them going. But they've gone into northern Hudson Bay and they have learned how to hunt whale. So they hunt the beluga whale, and it's very interesting how they do it because they kind of park themselves. Hudson Bay, I guess, where they are in that part of Hudson Bay,
Yeah.
the beluga whale comes there every year as they come in by the thousands just to go up into this one part of the bay where the water is shallow, and they use it. Oddly enough, they go there not to mate, but to exfoliate. They actually use the rocks that are on the bottom of the water, which is shallow, to rub it on their skin, and apparently it's to clean their skin of that bacteria, and it's like a giant spa weekend. So
Well,
the polar bear are waiting, and they kind of park themselves strategically and wait to get to a point where the whale's not looking, and then lo and behold they have lunch. you know but it's very interesting because the polar bears have figured out a way to get around the lack of sea ice
and
because they
who promotes going there for the polar bears? Mario Polarillo.
Perillo, yeah. I would love to, that is one of those places where I would love to go one day. So Frank Riccio on the chat board has announced that he has gotten toilet paper.
Yeah.
Glory. All I can say is glory, hallelujah. Um, and by the way, I didn't know this, but I was watching CNBC, and they were doing a report from California because California produces about the part of their economy is they have a $50 billion agriculture economy. So they were talking about toilet paper, and apparently one farmer said that you could do it the old fashioned way and use corn cobs. And I'm thinking, okay, but how? Just exactly how? Because
How did we get into? Oh, it's my fault. We mentioned about the Arctic Sea extent and the cold weather up in the polar regions. This is how we got to this particular point in time
yeah,
and subject, right?
exactly, exactly. So I just hope. I mean, I don't know if were you out at all today, or did you stay shelter in place?
No, I did. I do a lot of freelance writing, so I spent the time today putting, at the keyboard. I did step outside a couple of times. First time I stepped out is when it was like 51 degrees. And then my wife said, "Oh my God, it got so warm all of a sudden." And sure enough, stepped outside and within like a couple of hours, and it felt like we were in Miami Beach.
Yeah, Frank's right. So far, 2020 has been the worst. No snow, no winter, no sports, coronavirus, and the stock market crash.
Right.
Well, and not necessarily in that. I have to tell you though, I haven't really spent a lot of energy regarding this particular system for Monday. I basically, in my mind, just kind of wrote it off as another one of the ones that we've seen this winter. But I honestly, I was kind of hoping that it would snow just to distract everybody. We're all stuck at home.
You know,
It would have been a nice distraction to have snow out there, and you know, people would be taking pictures, maybe going out and doing a little bit of shoveling, but just kind of to um, take your mind off everything that's been that's going on. So, well, from that angle, anyway, if you look at it that way, it's not happening. So I was a little disappointed. I kind of hope I would like to be wrong about this.
Well, I'm sure that anybody who sees, a lot of people look out the window and see it snowing on Monday, and if they had any idea about going somewhere, they probably will say, the heck with it, I'll wait until tomorrow, or and that may actually mean that the roads, as quiet and as wide open as they have been compared to normal, will be even more so when we get to Monday.
Yes,
Yeah.
the chairman, by the way, has points out to me that this happened, I guess, at 6 o'clock. That New York City got to 77,
Wow.
which is a record. So they made it. So we could do a little Briller Jeopardy at this point. So let's get this.
Before we get to that, I right after we went off the air, Dennis Cassia yesterday. Um, I remember that movie that was done mostly in Australia about nuclear fallout all over the world and how the last place on Earth was Australia before the fallout reached them. And I could not remember for the life of me the title. The name of the movie was On the Beach. And
Yes,
how could I not remember the stars of that movie? Gregory Peck, Ava Gardner, Fred Astaire was in there playing a noteworthy doctor or scientist, and yeah, it's a Stanley Kramer movie. So
right.
if you want to go and look for it, it is a riveting movie. The only movie I find that's even more riveting is Failsafe, that was made in this movie on the beach was made I think in 1957. Failsafe with Henry Fonda playing the president.
I remember that, and
Wow.
the nuclear. They dropped a bomb by accident or something, and
Not
it,
what
oh,
no, what happened was is that our bombers, when they suspect that there may be some kind of a an attack going on, they all go to the failsafe point, which is up over the polar region.
right,
Well, it was a mistake. It was not supposed to be that way. And the bombers that are carrying 20 megaton bombs, they open up their top secret envelope and they find that they have to bomb Moscow. So now they're heading for Moscow with these bombs. Henry Fonda, playing the role of the president, calls up the Soviet premier, which at that time would have been Khrushchev,
right,
going back, bandying back and forth, and eventually they work up a plan where we, the Americans, are going to help the Russians try to shoot down our bombers before our bombers get a chance to blow up Moscow.
right. Yeah, I remember the movie. And then at the end, they dropped the bomb on New York or something. That
They
the
do.
Russians are coming
They
the
do.
other right. They
They
drop
do.
a bomb out of New York, and Henry Fonda, the president's wife, is in New York.
Right. Six bombers. One bomber actually makes it to Moscow and drops bombs on Moscow, destroying it. And the president said to the Soviet premier that if that were to happen, that in order to make up for that, that he would order out of Washington D.C. A similar bomber to go over. And he said, in fact, the Empire State Building was ground zero. That's what they mentioned in the movie. Of course,
Oh,
we know that many years
yeah.
later, ground zero really was. But it's a riveting one. But even more amazing, Joe, is
Larry Hagman in that movie
Larry Hagman.
was great. He should have gotten an Oscar. I've read a few reviews of his performance, and I agree with it. He should have gotten an Oscar nomination for for that performance as the interpreter.
Absolutely.
He was
But
brilliant.
one actor who you would least suspect in that movie played a very dramatic role.
Oh, Dom DeLuise.
Dom DeLuise.
Yes.
It's hard to think of Dom DeLuise as a dramatic actor, but I can assure you, if you've never seen this movie, this is a Dom DeLuise you never knew existed.
Yeah, it
And
is. It is a little. It is it's odd because you don't you know Dom DeLuise from his comedic years.
right,
You didn't really see too much. It's now that we get to see those older movies. Yeah, I mean it's an odd role for him to be in. But
right.
Larry Hagman was just as the interpreter was just amazing. I mean,
Amazing
really.
indeed. If you ever get if you have nothing to do this weekend, and if you don't want to indulge yourself with Christmas movies from the Hallmark Channel, which they're going to be running this,
Did you see my Facebook post about that?
I did.
Yeah,
And
the world needs to end now. The suffering that's going to be inflicted by those movies is too horrible to describe.
But if you really want to spend your afternoon, you know, I go on, find them on Netflix or someplace. Watch these two movies back to back on the beach and fail safe. I mean, it puts you in the perfect type of attitude for what we're all experiencing right
Yep.
now.
Javon Perry, thanks for hitting super chat. Is it possible that because there's blocking, that'll help keep cold air on the start of the snow at the onset that rain? There's no blocking right now. The blocking comes late next week. The negative NAO. It's not really a true block, but the North Atlantic Oscillation does go negative late next week. That's going to slow weather systems down and maybe slow highs down as they move out. But now, how much cold air are we going to have after that? So, you might have a shot that you might have some cold air. At least you're going to get some snow at the start up by you, where you are up in northeastern Mass. But you're going to go to rain as well. Let me just to remind everybody, by the way, Timothy Veltman on the chat board, if you haven't seen it, he has put up a link to Discord, which is basically not a perpetual chat room that is opened up with all weather talk, and I'm in there, and everybody else is in there too. You can post. There's a whole bunch of different categories that you can post in. So give it a good look, and it's free. So there's the Discord link is on there. Thank you, Timothy, for putting it up. And let's do Briller Jeopardy. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
So, since 1869, the number of 6-inch plus snowstorms that have occurred in the spring. So starting from March 20, on average, from March 20th on. How many 6-inch snowstorms have occurred since 1869? Good
uh,
luck.
haven't we done?
We might have, but let's do it again.
Okay.
This,
How,
if you got it wrong the last time, you'll get it wrong again.
I'll say a dozen.
That's close. You know, that's close. 10.
10. Okay.
10. 10. So I guess for areas north and west of New York City, there have been far more than 10.
Pro-
Probably.
probably.
Probably. So we're going into a weekend. I think what we'll do is we will skip tomorrow like we usually do on Saturday. Even with some impending snow on Monday morning, I don't think it's we both need a day off. So
Right.
we'll take Saturday off, and we'll be here Sunday morning with our usual Sunday morning show at 11 a.m., the Joe and Joe Weather Show. So mark it down because YouTube's being run by bots right now. So they you might not get your normal notification. So just make a notation on it. And I usually try and notify everybody on Patreon gets a notification from me from about the live stream and the time. Maybe I'll throw one up on Facebook on Sunday. Usually I don't put up. I put the video up after the fact on Facebook. But maybe Sunday morning let everybody know that we're going to be doing our live show at 11 o'clock just to get an audience in here who would like to be distracted a little bit.
And on Monday, we have, hopefully, if all goes well technically, on our 7 o'clock Monday show, we will have Captain Bill Kirk of WeatherTrends360.com, who will talk to us about his company, how he makes his long range forecast, some of the clients that he serves, and possibly answer some of your questions. And he bills himself as the real Captain Kirk because during the Gulf War, he was a captain in the Army, I believe, in from late 1990s into the early 20 or early 2000s. So it'll be fun to talk to him, and we'll see what happens on Monday in terms of flaky weather.
All right, and I got to figure out how to do a 3 box. Okay, so that's my job this weekend is to figure out the technical stuff with the 3 box. All
Okay.
right, so we'll see you Sunday morning. Everybody on the chat board and watching tonight, have a great Friday night and a great weekend. Do please stay safe. Do your social distancing thing, okay? Because we don't want people getting sick. All right, and we'll see you on Sunday. Good night, everybody.